I am happy to say that we have a wonderful time ahead of us today. And we have Tiffany Lee Poker. I love that. Tiffany Lee with us. This is Donna Blevins. I'm the big girl of poker at 6'5". By the way, I didn't share that with you.
Wow.
My husband is 5'3", just to let you know. And this is Women's Poker Association third Thursday talk. And he's growling. Oh, glad
He's snorting. Maybe I should put him down. He's a little noisy. But say hi, say bye to everyone, Gambit.
Yeah, that's just absolutely wonderful. Well, we've been sitting here for 15 minutes getting acquainted, and Tiffany, I feel like that we know each other. I'm absolutely crazy about you.
Oh, thank you. Same. Feelings mutual.
So, and I'm curious, when Daniel, just let me know if when I speak, does my face come back when I'm speaking?
When, on the layout I have, which is speaker view, I see you both at the same time. All that happens is a focus box moves from one of you to the other.
Okay, it's fine. We'll just let that go. Okay, and you've got some to mute there. Okay. All right. So let's start out by, why don't you tell us, Tiffany, why don't you tell us, how did you get started in poker?
I got started, I found the game in college, which was, I'm not going to say how many years ago it was, but it was like the mid 2000s. And I fell in love with it immediately. I found a house game really quickly, and I picked up the rules. And I think, funny enough, just to make this go full circle, the first time I got introduced to it was actually watching The Apprentice. Like Donald Trump. All right, this is a mistake having him there. Watching Donald Trump, The Apprentice, the season where Annie Duke was on,
mm-hmm.
and who won that year, and Joan Rivers. So it was like two key people, both like in poker and comedy, like the two things that I absolutely love on this show about business, which like, this was like before Trump became president. So it was just like, he was still a media personality at the time, but I was obsessed with that show, and I was obsessed with any and all game shows.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I had him, I watched Annie Duke's strategy throughout the whole thing, where she kind of like made all these poker strategies, but applied it to winning in The Apprentice. But she didn't end up winning. It was like she was a runner-up. But just the way she approached the show and the way that she was able to raise so much money, and her business strategy and acumen was like appealing to me, because at the time I was still working in corporate, and I was just like on the corporate ladder, like, career lady in the making, and that was like cool to me. So that's when I got turned on to poker, when before it was just like something like my guy friends would play, and I didn't really have interest in it. But I think Annie Duke got me interested in it, and then once from that show, and then once I like got into it and read the books, and they were showing the World Series on TV, it just spiraled. And then at that time, poker was still readily available to play online, so there was that level there. But I had like my ex-boyfriend at the time teach me how to play, and then I eventually got much better at it than him. So it was like it was a little, that was funny in that way. And then I just started finding more games and more friends who had a common interest, and it was just something that I loved for a really long time. But I didn't start playing seriously until like 3 years ago. And by the time I took it more seriously, the game was completely different from the books that I read in like the mid 2000s, like the approach and the way that people like sliced and diced the game. It was just completely different. And I just felt like, wow, there's just so much more stuff to learn. It was almost like I like took a year off and like did a master's degree in poker. Like it was just like grad school. So, and I still feel that way too. Now it's like my business grad school. Yeah.
So I love that. I absolutely love that. People need schooling. They need schooling. And, I've been a student all my life, and I absolutely loved poker when I came across the game in 1996, it was life-changing for me
Yeah.
because I was in real estate at the time, and I was the management broker for the Department of Veterans Affairs in 5 counties in Southwest Florida, and my days were stressful. I was working 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was just absurd because I was dealing with contractors, and think about acquiring properties that the VA had taken custody of because of the foreclosure process, and I had to deal with evictions, and it was a dreadful. And I literally sat down at the poker table, and I'm in a hand, and I'm worrying about what had happened that day, and I'm thinking about what's going on the next day, and where I'd screwed up. And all of a sudden, the universe kind of gave me the smack on the head and said, "Wait, there's only one thing you have control over, and that's the cards you have in your hand. This is the only thing that exists." And it was an epiphany when I came to that moment of mindfulness that has been life-changing for me, and poker saved my life.
Oh my God, it's so funny you say that poker saved your life, because I feel like poker teaches so many lessons that are applicable to life. It's almost like I actually found my way to therapy because of poker, where you let your emotions like take control of your decision making, and that actually hurts you in poker, and it hurts you in the long run. And if you want to improve your poker game, you kind of have to like do so much introspection and figure out where all these like decisions, these emotional decisions and tendencies are coming from, and master yourself, so to speak. So it's so interesting that you say that poker saved your life, because I remember being so stressed out and then taking a year off to play poker and being even more stressed out, and just getting to the point where I think I got very depressed, but it was like a level of depression I couldn't comprehend. And it was, I had taken all the analysis from like trying to improve my poker game and kind of applied it to my mental health. And it's been completely transformative in that way. So I encourage everyone to go to therapy. I think it's great. Especially because we were talking earlier about like a lot of soldiers in the VA having post-traumatic stress disorder, and how it's important to kind of like peel away all these layers. Sorry, I'm going to put him away. Can you hear him in the back? Is he a little
bit? A little bit.
All right. Sorry, just one little intermission. I'm going to give him a snack, and then I'm going to lock him up. Hold on, give him a sorry.
Okay.
All right, because he's like disrupting me. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I want to know, if you're here, I'd like for you to tell us how poker has been beneficial. Oh, that was fast. I was just going to ask a question. I was going to ask the people how poker has been therapy for them, but I never got back to that. You were fast.
Oh yeah, I just gave him some food. Like their food is his therapy. He might have an eating disorder, but he's an emotional eater. He got nervous, so I had to feed him. Yeah.
So you took a year off and played poker for a year, and then you stopped it to like go to school, do your own schooling, because you wanted to learn, and you read books, and you studied, and you did looked at hand analysis.
Yep.
Tell me, what is your biggest strength in life that you think transitions seamlessly to the poker game?
I would say real life skill. I would say a lot of critical thinking, and a lot of just being very discerning and judgmental. Like I think just being very decisive about those things is very helpful in the poker table, and just being very aware of your surroundings and how things feel, and then making adjustments according to that. I think a lot of times when I work with my clients, if I can get a sense if people are uncomfortable, or if they are very comfortable, and then if they are uncomfortable, what do I do to make them feel more comfortable? And it's like in real time, I'll make those adjustments for business purposes. But on the poker table, if I sense that someone's not that comfortable with their hand, I can just very confidently like just steal the pot there, just because I know, that's a very simplistic example, but I think my ability to just sense people's level of comfort. Like I'm very sensitive to people's feelings. So and I guess that's why I like comedy too, because like if people are kind of like, I love making people laugh. And I think it's one of those things that it's just like, It's just like, it's I think that the people orientedness is what drew me to poker. And I think on the flip side to that, what kind of turned me off to poker was just how like it can make people unfriendly too. And it can make people, and it's the competitive nature of it. It's like the swings of like just losing money and winning large sums of money and losing large sums of money. Like that takes a toll on like people emotionally and their psyche, and it affects them as a whole. And I think that's like super fascinating to me, because you see that when you deal with people buying real estate as well, because it's like the biggest transaction of their lives. It's like everything is like a big pot to them. It's you're like walking them through these key spots, and it's cool to be able to help people. And I think, yeah, I went on all sorts of tangents there, but yeah.
No, they were all related. And you were talking about, we talked about what your profession was before we started, and you're in real estate and the luxury apartments or housing in New York.
Yeah. And we were talking about $1 million listing.
Yeah, $1 million listing. Yeah. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
When I was in real estate, I worked predominantly with foreclosures on the low end scale. However, I got a CCIM designation, which is Certified Commercial Investment Member, which is actually, it's like having a PhD in commercial real estate. But I wanted that because I wanted to know how to figure out rate of return, and I wanted to figure out all the numbers, and so I took the training, and it was like, having that education. And what I discovered is that the value of the properties, the higher the value of the properties, tended to change my perception of money. So I'm curious, because you work in high dollar properties, how does that carry over to your valuation of money in the poker field? Is that a question?
I guess I can kind of like spin it into, because you're at that point, like value, you're talking about equity, right?
Yeah.
So an equity is something that is a keyword both in real estate and in poker. Like if you're in a pot with like 2 or 3 people, your equity is either like you have like your actual equity and your perceived equity. So that's like 2 different ways that people like will, I guess, conceptualize value in poker. And the same goes for like in real estate, where I guess there's like different ways you can slice equity as well. There's like the equity of the actual asset over a period of time. So that's kind of like if you bought a house in like 1992, what's the spread between its value from 1992 to like 2002 based on all the development that's happened in the neighborhood and around there. So there's that equity. And then there's equity in like improving the property. So if you take a house and you flip it, then that time frame is like condensed to like a few months versus a few years. Like, so for example, you were talking about foreclosures. If someone specialized in foreclosures and they had a team come in and renovate, they're basically putting in equity into the house by improving the condition, and then they resell it for more. And then that spread is where you get the new equity, like the new value of the house, and that's how they make money each time. And so I think in those ways, when you can find lines in real estate similarly to how you can find lines in poker, where it's kind of like, all right, what's the asset class that I'm starting with? And with poker, it's like, okay, what's the hand that I'm starting with? And then with real estate, it's like, okay, so what location is it in? And then with poker, it's like, okay, what position am I playing in? And then it becomes this trifecta of all these little different things that you need to like manage to like get from point A to point B and like win. So it's like, how do you just like find your way to winning? And I guess it's like, and I guess what's like fascinating to me is like when poker went through this whole thing where people started talking more about GTO play and like game theory optimal play, because I was a computer science major back in high school. I went to Brooklyn Tech. And when we started GTO didn't become a thing until like recently. It was like the buzzword for like when I just like got back into poker 3 years ago. Like everyone was like, oh my God, GTO this, GTO that. And like when I first got into poker 10 years ago, it was just like, aggression always wins, like Doyle Brunson's super system. So it was just like almost like ABC was no longer the way to play, and it was just like all this data. Like it just became this huge scientific nerdy thing. Whereas like it used to be this like, I don't know, I guess it used to be like a street smart thing, and then it became like this nerdy thing. And I feel like I've always been kind of a weird combo of both, where I never was 100% nerdy or 100% street smart, but it was like a happy medium for me to kind of like play around in, if that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah,
I totally went everywhere with that question. Sorry.
well, that's okay. That's okay. I like your tangents, by the way.
Okay.
So explain to someone who has no idea what GTO is, what GTO is.
Okay, so even I can't explain to myself. It's finding the most unexploitable play. It's the most unexploitable play in each type of situation. It's the most optimal way to play the hand that you are dealt. So it's kind of, I guess, like, for in layman's terms, GTO is like doing the best with what you got and not getting taken advantage of. And I think that's the most layman way to put GTO. And then add math on top of that, and that's GTO. I guess. So yeah, like with real estate, like with my negotiations and everything, I try to take like a GTO type of approach. To your point, like educating myself on all these processes, and by educating myself on how everything works and fits together, I can better advise people on, the lines that they should be taking to help reach their goals. And I feel like in that way, that poker mindset kind of helped. I can actually pull from that and help people in the real world using this game and all the cool little beautiful things that come out of it.
So speaking of that, how can you take the skills, your poker skills, and how can you then take them over into your work life as an asset? Explain how you would do that.
Okay, it's funny you say as an asset. I thought you were going to say something awful. I thought you were going to say, like, how does poker make it? Am I allowed to, am I going to get bleeped out on this?
Probably not. No,
okay,
go ahead.
So I'm going to do it. I thought you were going to say, how does poker make you an asshole in real life, in your real world? And I'm like, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked, Donna, because it does.
Okay, well, let's go there then.
Oh, okay. Well, it's an asset in that, like, you bring these critical thinking skills and these objective thinking skills and like just different ways to slice it. But you're also kind of like an asshole. Well, I feel like I've always kind of been that way though. Like I'm very blunt with my friends. My phone is blowing up, by the way. Like whoever's like watching, I'm not even paying attention to that. But I think like I'm just gonna turn it around.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I just think, all right, so I think when poker players give each other advice, they kind of like trim the fat by a lot, and they're just like very mean with the criticism. They're just like in a work environment, you'd be like, well, your performance here was okay, but you can use some work in this area. And that's like just, me off the top of my head. But like if I'm talking to a poker hand with my friend and I'll just run them through the line, they'll be like, wow, you played that hand like shit. It's just like, and here's all the reasons why. And it's just very black and white in that way, but there's like all these black and white ways of slicing out this one hand. So there's like multiple ways to skin a cat in poker. And I think knowing that there's multiple ways to do one thing keeps me open-minded when I look for business solutions in real life where, maybe one way we tried something didn't work, but maybe, all right, let's go back to the drawing board. There's probably another way. Or even like when I make a plan in business, I try to keep it as open-ended as possible. So I give myself like escape hatches, like an out, so to speak, like during different like phases of a deal. If like X, Y, and Z doesn't happen, then we just like shift gears to there's always like this poker map is always like going on in my head. And I've just like always seen the world kind of like that. And I think just strengthening it and like exercising that muscle would probably make me a better poker player if I actually like applied myself and studied more.
So since you're talking about your strengths, what do you think has been a challenge or a weakness at the poker table for you?
Ooh, great question. I think probably ego. Ego's been my biggest weakness. A lot of people I find with myself, I'm very hesitant to like disclose how much I don't know because I'm always afraid that I'm going to get judged for it. So I think that in a way, like not being able to get over myself hurts my growth and development. Like instead of just being like, I don't know, can you help me? I'm just kind of like, I cover it up and be like, oh, well, I kind of get it. And it's kind of like being the kid in class who's like falling behind, but you don't want to raise your hand and ask a question because you don't want to look dumb. So I think, because I feel like there's this, it's like poker's such a dick measuring contest in like the circles that I run in, that it's almost like you feel like stupid wanting to ask for help, right? So that's why like I like finding like supportive, like good people in the poker world where you can allow yourself to be vulnerable and be like, I actually don't understand this thing. Can you take the time to explain it to me? Because most people I've found are just like very standoffish and like kind of mean. So, and it comes with the poker personality too. Poker attracts a certain type of personality. They're fun personalities, but they can be very abrasive at times.
Well, it's really interesting that I fell in love with the game in my late 40s, mind you. And by the way, now I'm going to share with you my year of birth. Are you going to share with me your birth year?
Yeah, sure, why not?
How old are you today?
I am 30 years old.
You're 30.
Yes.
This coming Sunday, I will be 70.
Oh my gosh, you look amazing.
Well, thank you so much. The reason I said that is because poker spans the age range, and people don't realize that. I mean, it's been personally therapeutic for me. Like I told you, in 1996, it was life-saving for me because it brought me to that point of mindfulness, and it became therapy for me because I was able to have some place that I would go and enjoy myself and take away from the stress. And when I was at the table, it was astonishing because I was able to go in that place, the zone, where there was nothing else existed, because nothing else existed except the people that were at the table.
Yeah.
Even if you're I competed in the 2007 World Series of Poker Main Event Championship, and there was 6,400 players, and I was petrified to start out with because there were so many people, and there were 2,000 players in the first room that I sat at because there were 200 tables.
Yeah.
And it was a journey to be able to get to the top fourth woman out of 6,400 players.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
Thank you. And I was, if you would say, was I a good poker player? I wasn't. I was simply patient, and I was learning. I was still, even though I had, it had been 11 years since I started playing, I wasn't at a position where I could play a lot, but it was something that was very important to me. And I think the patience and the persistence that I learned from life was something that I took into the game. And I think maybe that might be something that people have failed to bring to the game, is patience.
Yeah, patience, and I think like a grittiness to like just get back on the horse every time like you fail. Because it's very easy to just like walk away, and actually not with poker. I know a lot of people who should just walk away that don't, but like, so that's a bad example. But you're certainly right. Like I think patience is something that a lot of people do not have in the game, and I think a lot of those players, I almost feel like most of them are men. Like I find men get very impatient and very angry quickly, and I think women, I used to think that being a woman in poker was like not an edge at all. Like I always felt like I got steamrolled and taken advantage of, and I didn't allow myself to really like lean into it, because I always had this theory, and people are probably going to be like, Tiff, you're full of crap, but I always felt like all the poker books that I had read were written by men, and it was like strategies that work for men. And yes, it was math based, but I almost felt like when I tried to implement those strategies, I felt like I played correctly, but they played differently against me because I was a woman, and no one wrote a book on how to play as a woman. And I almost felt like there was no material out there for me, which might be kind of bullshit because it's all math, and like I just might be like playing the gender card in my head for no reason. But I did for a while, I did think that like maybe my shoves didn't get through because I was a girl, or that I looked a certain way. And so like people are going to laugh at this. Like I cut my hair really short just so like I wouldn't look like a girly girl. Cause I had a perception that like maybe that look was hurting me at the table based on how I wanted to portray, based on like the style of play that I wanted to implement, which was like hyper aggressive. But now I'm kind of just back to square one, where I'm like, you know what? There's things I can't change. So let's just be patient and reevaluate the game. And I think, just going back to that, you're probably right.
I think one of the most important thing about the game, and it's one of the things when I became a coach, is that I wanted to help people find their authentic game.
Ooh, I like that.
And find their strengths and whatever they were, because some people just simply will be average poker players because of their personality style, because of their courage, because of who they are, but that's okay. Mm-hmm. They can be very good but still average. But what's important is I think people should learn more about themselves when they're at the poker table, not mm-hmm. let it be just about the money. And people are probably going to think I'm an idiot for saying that, mm-hmm. but I think it's really important to understand how it affects who you are. But I think finding your authentic game and finding your strengths and figure out how you can implement those, and poker has been amazing for me in relationship to discovering my weaknesses, because it seems that when you sit down at the poker table, everything is magnified. Whatever your strengths are, they're going to be magnified. Whatever your weaknesses are, they're going to be magnified. So I think that you can use poker as a good tool to help you become a better person.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. 100%. And I think for a lot of players that don't improve or take more time to improve, and I think this is just most people in general, they have a defense mechanism where like really looking into like where you're falling short is a very hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. And, transforming your poker game is very much analogous to, growing and maturing as a person in life. Like the way I play poker now is so like the way I think about poker now is so different from how I thought about poker when I played even 3 years ago, but definitely different from how I played in college. But even 3 years ago, it's just like, and I'm there's still so much to learn, but I can at least know that, the person I am today is so different from the person that I was 10 years ago. And in a way, my poker game also reflects that.
Okay, so go back 3 years ago and define who you were then in relationship to your poker game, and then let's compare it to who you are now. Tell us about those differences.
That's a great question. Okay, I will. It's a funny answer too, because I would say 3 years ago I was very aggressive and very naive, and I was like aggressive. I was like I was like, this sounds like so contradictory. I was bad, like I was aggressive, but in a really bad way. But that's not, actually that makes complete sense. You can be bad and aggressive. But yeah, I there was just like no real, I guess thought process between like my lines. I was like,
you just wanted to be aggressive, just to show them that you're aggressive.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. And like I would play like way too many different hands, and yeah, like basically I only had one gear, and it was like aggression, and that was how I played 3 years ago. And I was like, and I knew what like good hands were, but like I would get stuck in like, yeah, it was just a very one-dimensional game. I guess that's like the way I would say like who I was 3 years ago was.
So you were loose aggressive then.
Yeah, probably. I would say I was loose aggressive, bad loose aggressive, because you could be good loose aggressive. I was just bad loose aggressive.
So are you tight aggressive now?
I would say I am tight aggressive now, but tight aggressive, but more cautious. Like I take the time to think through my decisions more versus when I was like younger, where I was just like, ugh. But now there are times where like I'll just like snap call and be wrong now and be like, well, okay, whatever. But like 3 years ago, I'd just be like, what happened there? And now these days I'll be like, oh, that was just a standard spot. Whereas 3 years ago, I'd be like, it would be like the end of my world. Like I remember crying the first time I played poker live, like in a cruise. I remember, and it was just, I just lost $50. Like $50 is like nothing. And I remember being 21 21 at the time, and just going back to my room and crying because this was the first time I played live and I felt like everyone was mean to me. Like I was basically a weak little girl at the time. And then I grew up to be like this cold bitch.
Well, going from loose aggressive to tight aggressive is a maturing process.
Mm-hmm.
It actually is the process of you maturing as a human being and as a poker player.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, because when you're younger, you waste your time on so many things and on so many hands you have like no business being in. And as you get older and mature, you know where you should be allocating your time. Like what's a worthwhile pursuit, because you know yourself better, right? And you know what, you know, if you're like, I'm trying to think like how I'm more tight. I guess like, yeah, like I'm more picky about editing, like who my friends are, like how I treat people, how I want to be treated. Like I'm more cognizant of looking for situations that are healthier for me versus like just fun junk food experiences of my youth.
I love that. So do you play both tournaments and cash?
I do. I want to focus more on tournaments this year just because it's easier to align with my work schedule. But I do play like cash games, like recreational, like for fun now. But the year that I took off, I was playing cash games and tournaments. And I think what I found is that there's the strategies between them like bleed into each other. And I kind of just want to become more of a specialist in an area that I find more fun and appealing. And for me right now, that's tournament poker. Like I feel like once I master all the different like stack depths and positional plays and all kind of like to your point, like learning all the data around that and then knowing how to navigate and being comfortable in every single type of situation where I can kind of like where I don't feel like I'm missing any spots. Because right now I feel like I'm folding way too many. Like I feel like almost being tight aggressive in tournament poker and having that as your only speed is detrimental to your game, because you have to make adjustments for the table, right? So I think just like figuring out the best dynamic and like for like those different types of circumstances. I guess like it sounds really muddled the way I'm like I guess articulating this, because I feel like 3 years ago I can say things with certainty but be wrong, and now I'm like all muddled because I'm like there's actually 5 million different answers going through my head right now, and I'm trying to like, you know what I mean? It's like
absolutely,
it's like a PhD student who like now like knows that they know nothing, and whereas like a freshman is like I know everything. Like that's basically what it is. I'm like a grad student now who's like I've seen life and it kicked me in the ass, and now I know nothing. So I'm like having a cup filled with knowledge.
It's part of the maturing process. You're more comfortable in your own skin, both as a player and as a person.
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly right. I think when I was younger, I was very obsessed with like how I was perceived and like living up to everyone's expectations. And poker was something that was not well received by my family. Like I always, and oh my gosh, we found a way to get to this because we wanted to.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is like online therapy with Donna. So my mom.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Linda. She says, great discussion. So what happened was, I think, like growing up, I was always very much like a square. Like I was a good girl. I, didn't hang out with, all right. Well, I like for the most part, like went to school, did my thing, got good grades, goodish grades, went to college, like basically did all the step-by-step things that you're supposed to do, that, wouldn't bring up much of a stink with your parents. Like they were fine with that. For some reason, when I started playing poker, my parents got so pissed. Like they didn't understand it to an extent. Like I don't think they they've warmed up to it maybe a little bit, just because they realize like this is something that's probably not going to go away. But I remember like there was so much resistance in my early 20s when I would say, oh, I'm going out to a house game with like my guy friends, and my mom's like, why? Because they had this weird idea in their head that I was like going to play strip poker with a bunch of guys, and I'm like, that's not it at all. These are like the nerdiest people that I've ever met in my life. Like nothing like that is happening. But yeah, my mom always thought like they thought it was a weird interest for a girl to have, and like they just were just never comfortable with it. And then the year I finally decided to like take off and do it full time, that was met with a lot of resistance. And like, I kind of at the time had to sell it to them like, oh, this is, this is kind of like my bucket list item. I want to do it before I start a family and have kids. And like, what better time to do it than like right now? I don't have anything else really pressing going on that like requires obligation and like responsibility. So they were like, fine, do it. And then like when a year passed by and they're like, oh, this isn't really a phase now. Like, this isn't going to go away. And I think I was very thankful that like the first year that I did it, I like managed to final table the Ladies World Series of Poker event. And this was in 2016. And it was so fun because I actually rented a condo out there and in Las Vegas, and my parents came and visited me. And my mom was like, this was so fun. And like, I actually like won something. So my dad was like, they saw that there was some merit to it. And when I kind of like told them how much like the really great players were winning, they were like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. But they still see it as gambling, and they don't see it as like a way to like sustainably make money. And in a way, there's like truth to it. And then like a lot of the hardcore grinders will be like, well, that's because you suck. That's why you're not making money consistently at it. But to that point, like the maturity comes with like not just your decisions at the table, but your decisions with your bankroll and how you're managing your bankroll. And that goes back to like money management and how you manage your own personal finances. And that's something that you grow into. Like in your early 20s, you can be very irresponsible with money. And then you just wisen up as you get into your 30s and 40s. And I think there's a lot of good skills that it teaches in that way. But
yeah, from your family standpoint, people fear what they don't understand.
Yeah.
And when they don't understand it, they're afraid of it. And you mentioned the fact that there's just no resources for women. That's one of the reasons why we're here.
Oh, that's
Women's
nice.
Poker Association is to help unite women poker players worldwide.
Aww.
And, what advice would you give? And this is what people need from you, is how to play back at men. How do you play back at them who you feel like they're targeting you, or do you play at them differently? Give us some top 3 tips about how women might play against men more successful.
That's a great question. And
this is recorded. I think I'm going to put, that's a great question. I love that. Thank you very much. And I have my crib sheet, by the way. Daniel is my assistant as well, and he also says, "Oh, be sure to mention this." So I want to thank him, by the way, for being in my ear here and giving me suggestions. So
love it. Thanks, Daniel. Damn, Daniel.
Yes. What advice? Because the thing of it is that you said there's no resources for women. Well, that's what we're trying to put together.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons why we have these talks once a month. And I think they need to be more often, but that's okay. Once a month is what, as a young, dynamic woman full of exciting things, what do you think are the tips that you can give to women about how to play against men, play back at men?
Mm-hmm. That's such a great question. I know I've been saying that as like filler, but I think
no, that's fine.
I think like I'm probably not the most qualified person to answer that question right now. And I say right now because to date, all my like merits were just like running deep in ladies events, and that's like a chip I have on my shoulder because I'm still trying to figure that out too. I know how to play back against women. I'm a woman. I understand women.
Oh, but let me tell you, there's a tremendous number of women that do not understand how to play against women.
Mm-hmm.
And I will raise my hand because when I first started competing, and by the way, I always insisted, people say, you're a poker player. And I'm going, no, I'm not a poker player. I'm a poker competitor.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I would sit down at a table and granted, at 6 feet 5 inches tall, they're saying, what the hell is she doing here? I mean, they said, that big girl that plays poker, what's she doing here?
Yeah.
And I would want to show my strength. And I think that that's one of the things that women need to understand is, what mistakes do you think women make at the poker table?
I think men perceive us to like only have nutted hands. So I think one of the things is we don't bluff enough, and we should mix that into our game. We should be more aggressive pre-flop, I think, because I noticed like a lot of women will just like limp into pots pre-flop, and you're in a multi-way pot and you don't really know where you are in the hand. Let's see what else. But yeah, I think like upping the aggression, upping the bluffs, upping the creativity, because they underestimate how capable we are and how creative we can be with poker. They think we play a very one-dimensional game. Anytime we open, every time we open, they think like, oh, she either has like a premium holding, so I'm just gonna like fold. So I feel like when you get a sense that like people are giving you too much respect, you should kind of like push the envelope a little bit, and it's fine. I'm like reading everyone's comments and I'm like giggling at like everyone's feedback.
Randy said that's funny. He said he always thinks that he's being bluffed by women at the table.
That's so funny.
And Linda said that pre-flop aggression is her weak suit.
Oh, okay.
So I think you hit the perception right there. I think that women absolutely think, some of them think they have to have the hand, because I want you to understand what I learned about my husband. I told you I'm 6'5", my husband is 5'3", and he's one of the few people I look up to. And when I discovered the game, I said, would you teach me how to play? And this was in 1996, and he had literally put himself through school, had been playing poker all of his life. And we lived in Florida, and there really wasn't any poker here. And it was like, the gears were going, and he's going, oh, it's a guy's game. And then he said, well, if she learns to play, then I'll be able to play more poker. Yeah, I'll teach you how to play. And one of the things that I discovered was that I was waiting for the cards. And what I put myself, I created this concept of figuring out how random cards are. And we dealt out 50,000 hands of poker on the kitchen table before I ever sat down in a tournament, because I just wanted to see when the cards showed. And it taught me that, poker's not about the cards, it's about the people.
Yep. And to that point, because we both come from a real estate background, right? Real estate also isn't about real estate, it's about the people.
That's exactly right. And here you are in the real estate industry. Marsha Wolak, who will be our guest next month, has been in real estate. And when I look at people who have been successful and who are successful, and they also have some interest or have been working in the real estate industry, it's really interesting how they complement each other. But then when you come to Florida, you've got to have a real estate license in order to cash a check. I mean,
That's the same in New York. It's not the wild, wild west here, Donna. But like, to that point, like, yeah, I feel like, I have a theory that like real estate agents, like poker players would do well as real estate agents, because you can make your own hours and just sneak out and play a tournament whenever you want and never have to like lie that you're taking a sick day. That's going to sound so bad. If like anyone from work is, I tell them when I play tournaments, I told them I'm not even going to be here all of June. So
So how do you change gears? Ruth Hall asked a question because I had posted the query about give us questions, and she said, how do you switch gears between tournament and cash games?
So I feel like cash games is just, a lot of it is waiting. I feel like cash games is more forgiving of like waiting around. Like patience, you can play, patience is going to be your like biggest edge in cash games. Tournaments, there's like way more moving parts, so you kind of have to like be more willing to take risk in tournaments and just being okay with like dying, because like there was like a saying in a book I read somewhere where it's like, in order to live you must be willing to die in tournament pokers. So I almost feel like tournament poker is more fun in that respect, because it's almost like it's like a I don't know, it's almost like it's more of a game to me. I feel like tournament is more of a game than cash games is more of a poker game, if that makes sense. Like I almost feel like a cash game feels like a job. Like I'm going in, I'm clocking in, I'm looking for spots that are profitable, and I'm making sure I'm consistently making money in those spots. But with tournament, the randomness and the unfairness of it, and like those crucial flips that you need to win in order, and the fact that the blinds keep going up, so there's almost like a time limit to how long you can stay, makes it feel more like a game, and that there's like more stuff at stake, and it's more exciting to me than a cash game where it's just like you could chill, have a beer, like talk to your friends, and just like you can basically be the guy at the cash game that just sits and waits around for aces if you're in the right game. Like if you're playing like an easy like 1-2 game, like that's
I think
it's kind of boring to me.
Well, you're absolutely correct, and what has to the difference between the cash and the tournament, and since there's less than 5% of the various World Series of Poker fields with women, where do you see in 5 years or 10 years, will there be more women in poker? And how can we help women embrace poker more?
I love that question.
You can thank Daniel for that, because he's helping me here. He puts my questions together for me.
Love it. Damn, Daniel, so good. Let's see. Where do I definitely do see more women enter, because you've seen it. Like if you look at the statistics every year for the World Series, women are gradually increasing their presence in poker, which could be a good or bad thing for the current women in poker. Because I will say, the one thing that I do love about having very little women in poker is during the tournament breaks, there are like no lines for the women's bathroom. And there's like such a long line for the men's bathroom.
Oh, wait a minute.
Right?
In 2000. But
not a ladies event. Not a ladies
Oh, wait a minute. When I was, no, they took and made the ladies' restroom men's restroom.
Oh, that's awful.
Awful. You're talking about one that was upset. Yeah. I mean, I was in crises, and I came up and there were men waiting to go in, and I was furious. My temper went ballistic, and I reached up, and they had put this sign over it, said, change to men. I reached up and pulled that off and went in the restroom.
Good for you. When nature calls, man, you need to answer.
Yeah, because the way they had at the time, this was before they had the, and now they have those restrooms that are outside pretty close.
The porta potties, yeah.
Yeah, but I would have had to have walked 10 or 15 minutes to go to the restroom, and I was furious. Anyway, so.
Okay, so scratch that.
Yeah. Get rid of the furious.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do think there's going to be more women in poker. Similarly, like I almost feel like there's a correlation between more women getting interested in poker and encouraging more girls to be interested in like STEM fields. So like things that were predominantly very men focused, because I almost feel like poker is a very like technical, mathematical, and creative game. And I think like just like the way society is structured, where it was kind of a boys' club for so long, that we have that association with it. And I think I found the game easily because I was just kind of like a tomboy. But I think like society is getting more like woke in the sense that like girls don't have to just be girly girls. They can do boy stuff too. But part of it is men have to help. Yes, men need to be allies. So, and I guess like part of it is just having more men that are more like tolerant of having women at the poker table, and I say that because it's a very weighted thing to say, because I do see like some of the threads that I read with women like complaining about men. It's like, oh my God, men are so rude, blah, 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 blah. They curse all the time at the poker table. I feel so uncomfortable. And then the men are like, oh my gosh, now that we have women at this game, we can't be on our worst behavior anymore. Like we're with the boys. Like we can't have this locker room talk and all that jazz. And I just almost feel like, okay, in a way there, I get it, because like I can be very crude and like those jokes really don't bother me. But I also feel like as women, I think a great way to like just appreciate the game for what it is those women's events as like an entryway. But I also think that like for it to become more inclusive of women, men and women have to learn how to talk to each other better. Does that make sense? There's like a gender, like there's definitely like a weird gender dynamic at play at the poker table, and it's analogous to like real life.
Actually, there's a gender bias, which I highly approve of, by the way, because of the fact that men predominantly will think I'm doing something that I'm not, and when I can identify how they think they're profiling me, I can do the opposite.
Yeah. And that's, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. Go.
But I almost feel like that's also similar in business, because like a lot of people see me and they expect me to kind of just like bend over, like just curtail and just like be like, okay, you can have whatever you want. Like I don't want any like conflict, but they almost get taken by surprise when like I kind of like speak up for what I want. And this is another thing where I almost feel like women have always felt like they needed to have a good hand in order to be in a pot and like feel like they have a place at the table. And that also holds true like when they ask for a raise, when they ask for a promotion, they almost feel like they have to like have all these qualifications, whereas men just like raise their hands and be like, I'm ready for it. Like they'll like, they're more ready to take, there was like some study I read that said like men are more willing to like take shots at promotions that they haven't checked off all the qualifications for, whereas women will wait until they do check off all the qualifications and then go for the promotion. So
Linda says, I think we women have an advantage at the poker table and many men underestimate us. And I believe that is the case, but I think women need to understand that, because there's a lot of women who start out in poker and they haven't had the experience, or they might have relationship problems at home, because there's a tremendous number of women who are mistreated by men.
Oh my God.
In their relationships, and they fail to come to the table with confidence because of their experience with men in the past.
Oh my God, that's so spot on. You should write a book about exactly that. How to leave domestic abusers, poker strategies for success.
Oh, what's the name of it again?
How to leave your domestic abuser. Poker strategies for success. And oh my God, I even like wrote this as like a joke in my Facebook status. It was like, ask me anything. Should you leave your husband or wife?
How to leave your domestic abusers. Poker what?
Poker strategies for, I don't know. I feel like I think there is a relationship book on like using poker strategies for relationships, but I do think that there is a really good angle for like applying those strategies to like domestic abuse, like abusive relationships. Because if you think about it, the entire poker table is everyone finding a way to abuse all the people around them.
Yeah, and Randy said poker is such a competitive game that I feel like when you start categorizing people as either genders or races, that you as an individual are limiting yourself from being able to play optimally. And the question is no, and I believe that's absolutely the case, because of the fact that everything changes. And we call it poker feng shui, because energy changes at the poker table consistently based on how the chips move around the table, how people come and go. And it is absolutely the case is that we need to continually profile people rather than the gender bias or racial bias. I think we need to profile them based on what's happening right there in that hand. And I think that's, I think poker mirrors life, and it's a fact. And Linda says, I think self-confidence is key to playing poker, and I think that's probably one of the things poker players absolutely miss.
Yes, this is why we should teach girls how to play poker, because especially when they go through puberty, because I feel like that's when your self-esteem takes the biggest hit. And I was fortunate enough to find poker probably around I was also a very angsty teen. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure you couldn't tell I was an angsty teen. But I almost think that poker, being decisive and finding a way to stand by your decisions in poker kind of gives you a bit of a spine in advocating for yourself and giving yourself agency in social situations, especially as a woman, and speaking up for yourself and speaking up about what you want and don't want out of a male partner. And I almost feel a lot of times, it's gonna sound so bad, I play out my daddy issues on the freaking poker table because they're all my dad's age. And they're all don't want me to be there. I'm like, you know what? My dad doesn't want me to be here too. So, super aggressive.
And I would like to leave tonight saying that Daniel came up with the perfect title for the book. It's Know When to Hold 'em, Know When to Fold 'em, Poker Strategies for Unhealthy Relationships.
Ooh, I love it. That's going to be the next poker talk. And we're going to have people call in with their relationship issues. And we're just going to dissect it like a poker hand. Oh, what did he do? When did he, June 2009? When he, kissed your sister-in-law or what, I don't know.
I love this. I absolutely love this. And I want to remind everyone to pass the word on to join the Women's Poker Association, and it's WPA.poker. And still haven't answered any Facebook questions. I know we haven't answered Facebook questions because we've been in this. Well, I guess we'll just have to do another one.
Ooh, that'd be fun. I'll be more not crazy.
Oh no, please continue doing that. So Randy says haven't answered. Let me just look back. Oh, Randy said, it's a three-parter. Come on. Oh,
Randy said the novel.
Yeah. Let's see here. Knows that you've been a poker player running deep in a few charity tournaments, which she's been to, and have heard about many a deep run in others, seen firsthand your stand-up comedy routine, and I'd also heard firsthand how well you can sing. So first of all, which of these talents is your favorite?
So it was a poker,
comedy, and singing.
I would say of the three, probably singing is probably the one that still gives me the most joy. Right? Because the poker, it brings me the most joy because I know I'll never be good enough to be great at it. But wow, that makes me sound really cocky about poker and comedy. I'm but I know that I can crush it in poker and comedy. But I know that genetically, my pipes are I'm never gonna be like Whitney Houston.
Okay. And the next question was, are there any other interesting talents you have that we may not know of?
I like to draw.
Oh, you're artistic, creative. Oh, crochet. I love that.
Yeah. I love crochet. I used to knit a lot. So, but yeah, I do a lot of graphic design work. But some people know that. Yeah.
Yeah, my undergraduate degree is in graphic design. I think it has a lot to do. I think it has a lot to do with poker because you have to graphically be able to see things and understand the dynamics of it.
Yeah.
And the third question was, which of all your talents do you think best complements your poker game?
I would almost say that comedy helps with poker if we consider that a talent, because you're trying to find connections that aren't as apparent to everyone, and that's where it gets funny, and it forces you to be a little bit more creative, and your brain is kind of firing on all cylinders for the weird little aha moments. So I almost feel at the poker table when I realize something wait, there's almost a what the fuck moment. It's not an aha moment for me, more so than it is a what the fuck moment. Like if someone says something funny to me that's just strange and bizarre, I'm like, what the fuck? That's so funny. And then if someone does something that's out of out of what's been normal, like their pattern on the poker table. It's kind of like that spidey sense that just goes like, what the fuck? That was really weird. Like, why would you check raise me here? Like, you've never check raised me before. Like, so that it's kind of like, it's almost kind of like being able to catch these weird little things. Yeah.
I think it's your ability to profile.
Oh, is it?
I think that's it.
I'm a racist.
What?
No.
Not that. Yes, and Daniel says we definitely need to have you on for part 2. Absolutely, we need to do this again. It's wonderful.
So fun.
Any other questions somebody else has? This is just wonderful. I want to say thank you. This has been absolutely terrific. I've had so much fun. Tell me your biggest takeaway from sharing time here with me on Third Thursday Talks.
Oh my gosh. My biggest takeaway, I want to learn more about what you're doing for soldiers with PTSD using poker. Like, we need to have an offline discussion about that, because we were talking about the VA before and how, my mom has like my mom's worked there forever. I basically grew up in the VA and I volunteered there. So I would love to hear your thoughts, because I feel like that's something that can be spread to all the VA branches everywhere. Like, well, I think that's so great.
I think what we should do is let's do one about how to use poker as therapy.
I love that. Oh my God, because I'm obsessed with therapy too. I love therapy.
Okay,
we'll do that.
It's absolutely great, and I'm going to end the recording, but I'm going to stay on and do a little bit of housekeeping. So,
okay, should I stay on too? Yeah, right. I'll stay on. I'll in case you need me.
I want to remind. This is so much fun. I want to remind everyone this is your third Thursday Talk, Women's Poker Association. I am Donna Blevins, the big girl of poker. And please go to my book site, mindshiftonDemand.com, and opt in for a 4-minute audio on how to shift your mindset on a dime in the moment, and how you can actually change the way you are tilting at the poker table in the snap of a finger. This is Donna Blevins. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Donna.
Good night.